We'd like to begin this podcast by acknowledging the traditional owners of the land on which we meet today, the Whadjuk Noongar people, and pay our respects to elders past, present and emerging. Welcome back, Mel. We're back at it again. Episode 36, Talking Couch Potatoes. How are you?
Good. How are you?
I'm all right.
That's good.
Yeah, a bit nervous today, actually.
You are?
Yeah, a little nervous. We've got a very special guest. And when I say special, he's a real special.
I'm anxious.
You anxious?
Well, yeah, frazzled maybe already.
Yeah.
You'll know my trepidation, listeners, when you find out who's here.
Yeah, Mel's surrounded at the moment by dodgy blokes, I think. Is that
I'm
fair to say?
stepping into an hour of Gemma's life.
You're stepping into an hour. There's a hint for you, an hour of Gemma's life. But I'm looking forward to it. It's going to be very interesting, I think. But before we do that, Mel, can I just give you some news before you give us the updates on the Three Downs?
Sure.
Can I just tell you the countries that are listening to us now and give them a big shout out? I'm going to tell you all of them, Mel. You ready?
Yep.
All right, we've got Australia, obviously. Australia. United States, United Kingdom, New Zealand, Sweden, Ireland, Germany, Canada, El Salvador, Japan, Indonesia, Italy, the Netherlands, Thailand, Hong Kong, Iceland, Bulgaria, Greece, Malaysia, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Ukraine, Czech Republic, Singapore, Portugal, Poland, Finland, Mexico, France, Norway, Netherlands, Israel, Nepal, Spain, Greenland, Nigeria, Mauritius, South Africa, Brazil, and our latest listeners in Russia.
Wow.
Global.
We are.
We're a global phenomenon.
Yep.
Anyway, thought you'd like.
That's really interesting. I could just think of Trump when you're saying that.
what was I?
Just for the havoc that he's wreaking on, yeah. So,
on the world.
No, it is really good.
Yeah.
And I hope Ethiopia will get its act together and come on board.
Mel, that was where your
my son is from.
Ethiopia.
My son's birth country.
All right, Mel. Enough of bragging about the global reach of Talking Couch Potatoes. Let's talk about what's happening locally in WA.
Okay, so we have Hyde Park coming up on the 3rd of March, the Labor Day long weekend. We will be there on the Monday, 3rd of March. We are going to be talking to our supporters or anybody that will listen to us about the upcoming election.
Really?
We're not telling them how to vote.
No.
We are giving them an idea of what each party brings to greyhounds.
Right, what their platform is.
Yeah, to racing greyhounds in Western Australia.
Where they stand, what they're going to offer.
Where they don't stand.
Where they don't stand, yeah.
I mean, as you know, we've had two political parties in here recently.
AGP.
And the Greens.
That was a good one, the Greens. Yep.
We did reach out to the Liberal Party and they wouldn't come on. And we also reached out to Labor and they wouldn't come on. So before anybody comes at us and says, you're backing those parties, and we put the offer out to everybody.
Yeah.
And they declined.
We have some wonderful supporters in the Labor Party.
Absolutely.
I'm sure there's a couple of people in the Libs that are helping out a little bit.
Yep.
But I guess they haven't got the kahunas yet to just stand up and claim where they sit.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I struggle with a lot, to do with the politics in Western Australia as well. It's sad if you are not comfortable within your own party to bring up what is important to you or to the constituents within your area. You've still got to speak up because that is your role as the public's representative within Parliament.
Yeah, right.
So I would really ask that, I hope that all politicians will speak up for their constituents and do the right thing.
Yeah, grow some balls.
Yep.
Speaking of someone who had some balls, Brad Pettit, we interviewed in the last one. Also, Mel, you can go back to episode 34 as well and listen to AJP, which was a great interview with Amanda and Natalie.
Yep. Okay, the other thing we want to do is get everybody into Nana Bingo.
This is the biggest thing that's ever happened for me in Three Downs, Nana Bingo.
Yep.
I love bingo. I'm relatively fond of nanas. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do something different this time, Mel.
What?
You know, I normally turn up, have a few bevies, maybe annoy a few people.
Yep.
This time I'm going to volunteer. I'm going to be a volley.
Okay.
I'm going to dress up as a nana and I might serve people some wine. What do you think?
Okay.
You look a little unsure about that. No, I'm going to be a responsible volley.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, sounds good.
The look of surprise on Mel's face.
What about the
I'm wondering who's going to bid on the.
Can I? I can't bid on the live auction.
You can, but you might not be hammered enough to.
Mel, my goodness, I believe in responsible drinking.
Sorry, yes, he does. He's a very responsible alcoholic.
I'm always responsible for the drinking. Anyway, brilliant. Well, guess what? We're about to move into it, Mel. Our guest today. I don't know how to introduce him really. He's
your dad.
He's my dad.
Yeah,
it's Dad. I keep talking about him all the time on the podcast. I give him a bit of a hard time, don't I?
No, you actually say it. You speak quite proudly of him in the respect that you feel that he's changed and come to understand a little more about what can happen to a greyhound.
Yeah, and in all sincerity, I really wanted to have Dad on because I think we've spoken about that the younger community really is moving away from greyhound racing. But there's a generation of people who grew up with greyhound racing, and I've mentioned Dad took me to the dogs, and it was normalised, and I thought it was a great family thing to do. And it was only late in life that I sort of understood, and especially adopting beautiful Bunny and Bo, and through Gemma, understood the cost of this so-called sport. And, you know, I've been bugging Dad about it and dragging him in to listen to the podcast and having spirited debates about things. And I do feel that Dad's really shifted a little bit on his thoughts around greyhound racing. So I thought, let's let him speak for himself. And here he is in the studio, my dad Raymond. Hi, Raymond.
Hello, Matt.
Hello,
Raymond. How are you both?
Well, thanks.
And
thank you so much.
congratulations on your touring the world with your podcast. Amazing.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
That's another way of looking at it, isn't it?
We're touring the world.
Yeah, those are good.
Thanks for making time, Dad, to be here. I know you've got a very busy schedule of playing golf. And what else do you do?
Sleep a lot.
Sleep and golf?
Yeah.
Yeah. So thanks for coming into the studio. Are you ready to face the music?
Certainly.
Yeah, all right. Mel, first question. Why were you such a prick of a father to...
I got some training in that area. Yeah.
Let's not go into that one.
Yeah.
I do actually have some questions. Sorry, we'll edit that bit out. So, Father, I know a bit about you, but our listeners know nothing about you other than what I've sprouted. But I know you came across greyhounds at a very young age, and our listeners might find this bit weird, but this is the generation that they used to be roo dogs, right? And you used to go out and you'd hunt kangaroos, and the greyhounds would be the roo dogs.
Yeah, they were actually whippets.
Ah.
So whippets, you would most likely know, are a crossbreed from England, where they were actually terriers and small English greyhound.
I did not know that.
Yeah, so they were a similar looking dog, but small.
Yep.
And they were originally bred for rabbit hunting.
Right.
So my dad and his brother we lived on sawmills as a child, I did, and they always had a whippet. I was given a whippet when I was quite young.
Yep. How old do you reckon?
Old enough to wander out in the bush on my own, probably 10.
Yeah, in those days that was the...
they didn't care where I went, yeah. But it had a cowbell on it, so if a kangaroo took off, the dog would take off, and I would just follow the cowbell noise.
Yeah, wow.
So it was a lot of people had kangaroo dogs, as they were called.
Yeah. Even sometimes I'm walking Bunny and Bo around, and some of our, especially Indigenous friends, say, "Oh, that's a roo dog."
Yeah.
Okay. Did you form a bond, or was it more of a this dog has just got a job to do, or did you?
No. Well, one dog, Rusty, I remember, I got close to him probably because I was older, but they weren't an affectionate dog as such. More a working dog, I guess you would say, like brought in the house and things like that.
Yeah. So they never learnt really to be affectionate. Yeah. And I guess moving on as you grew up, you, I guess like me really, you spent your adult life watching and I guess betting on greyhound racing. How have your sort of views changed as you've learnt through me and obviously through Gemma and the podcast and I guess our association with Free the Hounds, bombarding you with stats and info, and have your views changed and how have they changed as you've learnt more about the...
My views have changed a lot because... I didn't go to the greyhounds a lot, but my mum loved going to the greyhounds, so I would take her. And I always regarded greyhounds as almost not a dog. They were, I guess you now call them a commodity.
Yeah, right.
And they never appealed to me. I could never say I would go and get one.
Yeah.
But of course, when you two got your Bo and Bunny, I realised they're very an affectionate dog, aren't they?
Yeah.
And the laziest buggers I think I've ever run across for a dog. They sleep all day, but they love to go for a walk, and they love to play.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've changed my views there. I would probably still not necessarily have a greyhound, but if one was in a predicament,
Yeah.
If it needed a home, I would probably take it.
Yeah, because I know you've already got your beautiful little
Yeah,
princess. Dad has a rescue, Lucy. You just met Lucy
She's
today.
so lovely.
Yeah. She's a stunning little girl. You mentioned the affection, and I know whenever Dad visits Mel, both dogs go nuts.
Yeah.
Bunny and Bo. But Bunny in particular really has kind of...
Yeah, she's a bit of a daddy's girl, I think. That one. Yeah.
And a granddaddy's girl.
Yeah. But no, they're grown on me for sure, and I've changed my view. I remember I had friends have greyhounds in my younger day back in the 70s, and one neighbour had one, and I could never understand of all the dogs he had. Then I realised it was he called it a hobby, but it wasn't really. It was just a little way of making some money on the side, I think.
Yeah.
Or he thought that dog never won a race.
Yeah, right.
And there were some cruel parts to it in them days. I know all dogs had to get blooded, as I think was the phrase, is it? Yeah, blooded.
Using live bait, I think.
Yeah, Bobby's name was. He used to buy rabbits, people with ferrets.
Yeah.
And that dog had to be blooded every so often, or it wouldn't race.
Yeah.
So that was one side I saw that I didn't like straight away.
Yep. And that still happens, Mel. It's not meant to, but we are aware that there are cases of this still occurring. Is that right?
Yeah, not in WA so much, not that we're aware of, but definitely on the East Coast. I mean, there's investigations into it all the time. In WA now, I think the proximity of trainers to the city is very different to what it is on the East Coast. So you can literally be in the bush up there, and you've got lots of farms and lots of
isolation,
and you know it's vast, and there's tracks all up and down the coast. Whereas here, you got 3 tracks. One that's not used for half of the year, and a lot of it is the majority of the trainers live in quite suburban areas. So, but does it happen? Probably.
I've never really seen that a greyhound will chase a lure with that much enthusiasm unless there's been a reason for it.
Yeah.
I'd be very surprised if a lot of dog owners don't still use that method.
Yeah.
I know they get lures now and cut them up and put scents on them.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't say it's definitely gone.
Yeah, yeah.
So becoming a granddaddy of Bunny and Bo, that was a big factor for you then to rediscover what greyhounds are? And
look, definitely. Yeah, definitely. I'm like you. I saw the greyhounds racing around. To me, they were a scrappy dog. What a better words. Something that I would never look at.
Yeah.
And the sport itself, I've been a few times over the years. I could never really understand the interest in it. The first day I went to a greyhound race, the race started, and I thought, I'll wander over and watch the end of it. And I said, where are they? And they thought, they're finished. It was a 230-metre race, I think. You're right?
Yeah.
And they're racing. I'll walk over and see how my dog is going. And I thought that was a waste of time. Why would I come here and watch that happen in a matter of seconds?
Yeah. And what about when you, as you know, so it's not just that it's maybe not an exciting thing to watch, it's also infused with death and injury and pain, and that's just on track, not to mention off track. As you discovered more about that, did that sort of...
I remember Bob, as I was saying earlier, one of his dogs lost an eye in a race, but he didn't retire it. It just had to go out and race with no right-hand eye. So it quite often would lose track of the rest and be running along the other side of the track or pull up. Yeah.
It's still not against the rules to race them with one eye.
No. The other thing, of course, was that if the dog didn't perform, where's your dog, Bob? I got a new one. Where's the old one? He's gone.
Yeah. That was common practice, Mel, that dogs weren't rehomed. They were.
That's why we're only just now finding out the crisis that occurs at the end of the pipeline when they can't be rehomed, because they were all killed up till 10 years ago, 15 years ago. They were given a bullet or hit on the head or sent to the university. So many of them went to Murdoch Uni to be used either as blood donors or as cadaver dogs.
Yeah.
It was actually Professor Andrew Knight, that fought against the use of greyhounds, live greyhounds, at Murdoch University here, to be used as cadaver dogs, because they would be put through horrible testing and work prior to their deaths. Even Royal Perth Hospital used to take them for research and things like that, and experiments.
And we know there's so much wrong with this industry now, but if you look at its ugly past, its ugly origins, it says something about where it came from. When we talk about these dogs being killed, blooded, used for testing, it kind of points to maybe... it was never really a good idea. Oh,
absolutely. And the thing is the people that were involved 30 years ago are still there now. How fundamentally can it actually change?
Well, you look at America. America most of the states of America stopped greyhound racing in the 1990s.
Mm-hmm.
There's very few states in America still have greyhound racing.
I think there's only 3 tracks left, isn't there, Mel?
There's one state in the US, I can't remember how many tracks there are, but there's one state only that they're allowed.
And yet we are supposed to be a very advanced civilization in Australia or society.
Yeah.
And we've done nothing really.
No.
It's a bit rough to be behind the US on something like this,
Especially
isn't it?
now.
Yeah.
Even presidents, eh?
Yeah. Sorry, Mel?
Did you ever witness accidents at the track when you were there? Like
I
injuries?
said I didn't go a lot. I could never really get into it, and I like to have a punt. I like to gamble if I get the opportunity. Play a poker machine or occasionally go to the races. But yeah, I saw a lot of dogs trip over each other.
Yeah.
Especially, or start fighting. They would even start fighting when they're racing.
Yeah.
One would bite the other, and then it was on. And you'd see the dogs fall over, especially when they pull the gate over.
Yeah.
And somebody goes out and grabs them, and you'd think, oh, there's something wrong with that dog. But of course, you never found out. Those of us who were at the race, I suppose we didn't go to the racing to do that. We went there to have some sort of entertainment, I guess, have a meal, have a little bet, and hope we were lucky.
Yeah.
And the dogs didn't
Factor too much into it, yeah.
Which I think is why it's so important that Free the Hounds and this podcast bring to light actually that, because that's the image they want to sell, isn't it, Mel? That it's a fun family outing, bring the kids.
As we're just speaking now, there was very recently a dog clearly stumbled, fell over and ran into the wall, and it looked to me to be knocked out. Maybe it snapped its neck, so hopefully the poor thing died straight away. But that vision was cut from the telecast on Sky Media. So you can see the cut, and Racing and Wagering didn't even put it on their website. So that just, to me, speaks so much about the fact that clearly we don't want you to see the other side, but that is the fundamentals of racing. That's what happens. Every time the traps open, that is what these dogs have to risk.
Yeah, and that's what we want to get out to people is don't believe the public sort of perception they're trying to give out. Look at the facts. And one of the simplest facts, Mel, are that over 1 in 3 dogs, over their career, will suffer some kind of injury or death.
Yep. Of the greyhounds that raced in the 23-24 race year, 44.7% of those individual dogs suffered an injury of some kind.
That's extraordinary, isn't it?
And 44 died due to injury.
Yeah, I think from the view of a person that's not that wrapped up in any racing, but I love to have, as I said, I love to have a gamble. I think that sport is obsolete now.
Yeah.
It's time for it to go because it doesn't attract a lot of people to the track. As I say, the few times I've been, there's not a lot of people there, but it's a revenue maker. And it's not a hobby for anybody. When I first saw Bob and the other boys, they had one dog. Yeah. They'd walk it, feed it. Yeah. Now it's a business.
Yeah. Yeah, or they still classify it as a hobby.
Yeah, I know they do.
But they just get away with it.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, it's incentivising people to use these animals for a hobby. They get the benefits and the poor old dog gets nothing from it.
I think one of the things that you people have highlighted is the fact that those owners are getting paid to put a dog on the track. I think you said it's $100.
It depends on the length. It depends on the length of the race.
Yeah.
It goes from $65 to $150, depending on the length that the dog runs. And the dog, the trainer whose dog died, they still would have got paid for bringing that dog to the track.
Well, it'd be tempting, wouldn't it, to say, well, I'll have a handful of dogs and I'll stick them in even if they're no good.
Absolutely.
And get that money.
This dog had run...
Nice little sideline.
Yeah. This dog had run 67 races. She was going on 4 or just turned 4, and she'd only made $11,000 in prize money. But all of those 67 races, that trainer was paid to have the dog there. And if the trainer's taking 5 other dogs in the trailer, why wouldn't you fill your trailer up?
Of course you would.
Same amount of fuel.
If there's a spot in the race, and
exactly.
I might also take that money than not.
And Racing and Wagering want them to take their dogs, or Racing WA do, because they've got people punt gambling on it. And that's how they make their revenue.
Yeah, the more races, the more revenue. Yeah. So the whole system is set up to run these dogs into the ground effectively. There's a strong incentive to maybe ignore deterioration of their body, their fitness to race, their health, because you're going to miss out on money.
Originally, they would have killed the dog and got a new dog, which was actually probably more humane than what they're doing now, which is because they can't rehome them, they continue to run them. Because why would you have a dog in your kennel that you can't rehome, but you'll keep it in there, but you'll get the $75 or the $120 for running them on the track.
Yep.
So it's now, because they can't just knock them on the head, it's turned into this cycle of we'll exploit it further.
Let's wring as much out of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The greyhounds are just screwed either way.
Yeah.
Bit like having kids, isn't it? You can't knock them on the head either.
Exactly. That's
He
how
tried
it
a
should be.
few.
Yeah, you've got to keep them, feed them, and they give you no return sometimes. So there you go.
Hey, mate, you get to come on a podcast, though, you know.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. In how many countries?
41.
Yeah. We'll be known in 41 countries.
41 countries.
There
Yeah. I'm going to wrap it up a little bit, but first of all, thanks, Dad. And I just wanted to say one thing about Dad is he's of a certain generation, but one thing that he's had throughout his life is this real compassion for people. I've seen Dad save little critters. He used to have a bunch of birds that he'd call into his yard, and the little legless one, he'd feed them by hand. And so it's not a surprise to me that when you see cruelty, like your old mate with the dog, or when you learn about what actually happens in this industry, that you're capable of thinking with your heart. But we know a lot of young people are moving away from greyhound racing, but there are a lot of people of your generation, Dad, who maybe, again, aren't as aware of the cruelty, or maybe don't care, I don't know, who still want to keep this sport going, and it's mostly older guys and women. What would you have to say to them? From the perspective you're coming from, as somebody who used to go to the track and now has this sort of understanding, what would you say to them?
I've said before, ignorance is bliss. You know, if you can ignore something, and there's no way in the world you could not go to the greyhound races and realise that somewhere during the night a dog has been hurt or injured or killed, because it's not uncommon. And your podcast has brought that information to people of my generation and others. And I think a lot of them will look at that now and think, yeah, maybe I haven't quite given this the serious thought.
Yeah.
Maybe it is time to stop going there and find something else to bet on.
Yeah, and there's plenty to bet on.
Oh, two flies up a wall.
Yeah,
I've bet on that before, yeah.
But that's the thing, and that's, I guess, that people, when you said yourself that the dog doesn't actually factor into your night out anyway, so many people, I see it time and time again, they're at the pub and there'll be the machine there. You got the greyhounds or the dogs, the horses on the screen. They're keying in their bets and then they'll watch it and then that's it. There's nothing more than that. Like you say, a few seconds and it's over.
Yeah.
They've got no thought about what happens to that dog. Why can't we use AI?
Virtual racing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
If you want to have a dog race, do
I
that.
actually went to a night,
you know?
recently
Yeah.
of that setup, and it was everybody was having a little bet on their little TAB, but there was no actual dogs.
Yeah.
It was all done virtual,
Yeah,
and
right.
it was I had a good night.
Yeah.
Cool.
There's ways around it,
Absolutely.
for sure. I've been to our local dog racing course a few times, and if I look back and somebody said to me, "How was your night?" I'd say, "Oh, I had a lovely restaurant, and
Yeah.
I had a few good beers and good talk to people. Well, how'd you go to the races?" "Oh, I think I bet on a couple of races, but I was too busy having a drink and a dance."
Yeah, so it's not entertainment. It's not really entertainment. It's gambling.
Yeah, it's gambling, and not the majority, but a lot of us just go there to have a night out and go to a restaurant.
Yeah. And that could be all the restaurants, because it's a government organisation. Those restaurants and those parks, those areas that are being used are actually owned by the government. So there's no reason that they can't be repurposed and keep those function, because that's what so many people say, especially at the Mandurah track. I'm not sure which your local is, but the Mandurah one, people like going to having the buffet and that. Let's make it a family-friendly place.
Yeah.
Change the landscape of what's there, use it for open park spaces or skate parks, whatever, and let mum and dad have a relax and have a drink and that up in the restaurant, and the kids can be playing outside.
Yeah.
There's so many different
Look,
things.
I think the industry's answer initially will be, we'll have a straight track. I think
Yeah,
that's
they're already
what-
trying to do that
are
in
they-
Pinjarra. Yeah.
Because that would be logical to them, but it still doesn't take away.
No.
That's just not right.
No, and it won't factor in that dogs are still being trained on round tracks.
That's right. And
because the bull rings are in most of the properties in WA, and it also won't take away the fact that they're going to have to race at Cannington sometimes and at Northam, and they want between $25 and $50 million
from the government,
yeah.
no doubt. Yeah.
Absolutely, because, they don't have any infrastructure money.
And
So I tell you what, there's going to be a fight, tooth and nail. And the land that they want to put it on has heritage listing because of a massacre that occurred there. So hopefully there's just way too many barriers.
Of course, they've got a big plot of land in Cannington that would be worth millions and millions of dollars that would be fed back to them, I would think.
Which our wonderful Mayor of Cannington has already asked. As you said, we need to end this. Just to add to that litany of reasons a straight track, isn't the answer. It's also not going to stop the fact that these dogs will be bred to race and race again. Dad, I can't imagine your little princess Lucy. You would imagine her just spending her life in a kennel for 23 hours,
no.
Send her out to race, send her out to race, send her out to race. It's not a life for a companion, is it?
It's not a companion in that case, is it?
Yeah.
It's an investment in a business.
Yeah, exactly.
So you can't say necessarily... Look, there'll be greyhound owners out there who love their dogs. I have no doubt about that. But there'll be a lot of people, when you've got 8 or 10 or whatever amount of dogs, you're not giving them much attention, are you?
No.
Yeah. Mel, what do you reckon? How did he do?
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good.
Yeah, not a bad guest actually. You might
Is that right?
Yeah, I think
I might come back then.
He was all right, wasn't he?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Actually, I've always wanted to be a compere, so I might have your job.
Did you have any more thoughts for Raymond?
No, I didn't. Thank you very much.
Lovely to meet you, Mel, and congratulations on what you're doing. I hope you win in the long term or the short term, ideally.
Yeah, absolutely.
And people start seeing things sensibly.
Thanks, Dad. It's nice to have you on our side.
Thank you.
Well, I guess that's it for the podcast. That was kind of fun, actually.
Nice.
By the way, he's way less reasonable than that in real life.
I was going to say, before the microphones turned on, I was worried, but...
Yeah. No, I'm very proud of Dad, and I hope that men and women of Dad's generation will follow that role model of, look, you can be brought up with a certain paradigm, you can be brought up believing this and believing that, but be open to understanding when you get more information. Be open to changing your freaking mind. And, so thanks for leading the way, Dad. Well, keep listening, everyone, and keep sharing the word. Keep learning and growing and changing your mind so we can eventually one day release the hounds.